infinite complacence, people went to and fro the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
We've had just a touch of humidity here because it's monsoon season and everybody's just whining and crying, and because we're not used to it. But if it was there for you guys, you'd be like, this is nothing.
We're in our third month of our 11 months of August. Yes.
Exactly.
We all live here for that 3 nice days in March.
How the heck are you guys?
Fantastic. Carrie and I are gearing up for cons again. Tampa Bay Comic-Con this weekend. Then we have a weekend off, and then the next weekend is MegaCon, and then the next weekend after that is Fanboy Expo. Then we have a week off, and then we do Sinister Nights, which is a new con down in Miami. And we're guests at all of these, so it's crazy.
I just wrote all those down so that I can put those in the show notes for everybody.
Oh, okay.
Because this will air tomorrow, so even if people want to, they can go to the Tampa Bay Con. Are you guys getting excited for Dark Sky to come out?
Yes. I've been eager. I saw the sneak peek and loved it.
Yeah.
And I'm excited. I'll put my review up as soon as it comes out because I'm going to buy it and review it. Even though I was also one of the Kickstarters, it's funny to see my name in the credits and then in the Kickstarter credits too. I'm like, I Kickstarted it before I was going to be part of it. I didn't know.
No, I think this one turned out awesome. And I think your part turned out amazing. I mean, your part it's Indrid Cold. I mean, it's a huge part of it.
Yep. That's a big, for those that didn't hear our last time, because I broke that news on your podcast last time. So
yeah.
And, it was fun watching Seth's reaction to the news.
Exactly.
Since we were doing the Zoom and I didn't get to see you guys too much, it was great to see that. So
yeah, because I just kind of sort of told him what it was. So that was his first time hearing the entire encounter, and he was pretty darn stoked about it, I'd say.
Yep. I mean, to this day, that is still the craziest, news I've got. I found a few more bombshells that we'll discuss today. One kind of in particular. And then a related one that also ties into Dark Skies, which is why I wanted to talk to you this week.
And I was looking back because, I always link all of your shows so everybody can find the many, many times that you've been on. And you guys have been on the show officially as guests. Now, there have been other times, you've called in to the hotline or you've been part of a patron-only show. But this is you guys' 10th official visit to ITF.
10th anniversary. 10th oh, my gosh.
Anniversary. Happy anniversary, you guys.
Yeah. It's been a fun run. I gotta say, you're always our favorite to be on. And the Into the Phrazies are just awesome people. I get so many wonderful tips and news stories after we do an appearance from you. It's always fun.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, I think that the Phrazy Nation or whatever we want to call them, they're pretty interactive, which is nice. And I have a ton of them down there in Florida. And I'm glad that they reach out to you guys. It's only natural that they do.
Yeah. I mean, we were just at an event last weekend because I had some people reach out to us and they were concerned about some spooky happenings at their location. And we were able to arrange a paranormal team to them. And then they were so happy with the response from the paranormal team, they were able to open up and invite, like a group to come in and investigate with the paranormal team. So it was a fun event. So I love it when things like that, work out.
That is so good. Yeah, I wish I had a little bit more time. Of course, you have to just make the time, but to actually go and do some investigations. Of course, I'm not exactly the the ghost gal kind of a thing. I'm more the cryptid, but there's not a lot of woods around my area, so I probably should just try to search and investigate whatever I can.
You got a lot out there, so
yeah,
you got all the things out there. So,
and then I found a website that has all these cool T-shirts, and they have a lot of things from movies like Quint's boat tours from Jaws, and funny shirts. And then they have a whole section of vintage Las Vegas that has the Tangiers, which of course is not an actual hotel. It was from the movie Casino. But then they have the dunes and all of these other lovely properties that have now been imploded and demolished. So I'm like, man, I could spend a fortune on that website, because there's a lot of cool historical things just tied into a T-shirt that you can get things started as far as a conversation goes.
Yeah, easy peasy. I mean, that's my big thing now is since we've stopped doing Hellview Cemetery is officially pretty much dead and buried. We've been doing I've changed my look a little bit for appearances. We're not doing the creepy stuff except at Halloween. I've been doing a lot of Hawaiian print. So my Hawaiian print wardrobe has grown and grown as people have sent me Bigfoot hiding in Hawaiian print and dinosaur bone ones, and of course some UFO ones, and of course I'm nerdy, so a lot of Dungeons and Dragons ones too and stuff like that. So
dude, you gotta have the D&D. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's where it all started. So gotta go with that. So hunting Bigfoots and ghosts in West Virginia and Dayton, Ohio, and our farm in Kentucky, and hunting the bench leg, and then wearing and then Hawaiian print. Of course, it all ties back in. So
Hellview is officially, that's for now just going to be put to bed.
It is, it is in a dark closet. The books are no longer available, sadly. So if you've got them, they're collector's items. Yeah, it's going to be dead for a little while. We got a new mayor in St. Pete coming, hopefully, after the election this year. So maybe next year, but it's also been several years since we've done it. So I don't see myself, running out and digging in the dirt and building another haunt again anytime soon.
Right. At least not until the COVID situation is actually maybe rectified better than it is now, because it looks better and then it goes right back downhill again. So. And
that is if we get a friendlier administration down here. So who knows?
Yes.
May just get more of the same. But anyway, we've got stories to tell you.
Yes, we do. And I'm so excited. I only have the list this time. Normally, it's the situation where I've been sent the book and we go in sections and I pick them. And then the next section is more stories, or the next episode, I should say, is more stories. Yeah. But this time, I honestly don't know the details from anything on the list you have sent me. So I'm really stoked.
All right. Well, the thing is the new books, Eerie Appalachia has been, or Appalachia, depending on which part of this, the heart of the mountains you're in, has been delayed till early next year. So we haven't been able to do much more with that. But in the meantime, we've had a lot of Florida ties while I was researching the book to some events that happen up there that tie in to the events in Dark Skies. So these were important. I felt, important enough stories to tell that I thought, hey, I can share this with the Into the Fray crowd. The first one is, now in Dark Skies, we talk about the Flatwoods Monster extensively. I mean, you guys film in the Flatwoods Monster Museum, which is an amazing location.
Have you guys been there?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we were there last year because we were supposed to go to the Mothman Festival last year. And when that got canceled, we went ahead and went to the Flatwoods Fest, which was the week before, which hadn't been canceled, and got to talk to Seth a little bit and got to see the museum and ate at the spot.
Yes.
And sat in the chairs. And, and it was while we were doing research for the new book. So it worked out. But anyway, the Flatwoods Monster incident, for those that don't know, infamously, September 12th, 1952, Braxton County, West Virginia, near the town of Flatwoods, had an encounter. A craft crashed there, and an alien in some sort of suit was seen outside it, and then it spotted again a few days later in a more decrepit state, it had gotten out of its suit and was half in, half out. Descriptions were giant thing with red eyes, and That, and the people who saw it had this strange, burns on them from their eyes and their hands. The family that saw it, a crazy incident, made national news, and the family got kind of in trouble because people thought they were making it up and, making it sound like their town was a bunch of yahoos and all this. Well, we were researching that for the new book, and then I realized on my timeline, it ties in with an encounter down here in Florida that happened just a couple weeks ahead of that. August 19th, 1952, there was a Boy Scout scoutmaster named Dunham DeVergers, known as Sonny. And he was driving a group of Boy Scouts home near West Palm Beach, Florida. Runs right alongside the South Florida Everglades on the, just on this dark old road. And he was driving the boys home, and he got distracted by a bright flash in the sky over the swamp. And he immediately says, "Ooh, that might be a plane that crashed. I better stop." And he gets out of the car and starts, just walking towards it. And then he sees how thick it is. So he goes back to the car and grabs a machete. And, he's like, "All right, kids, stay in the car. And if I'm not back in 15 minutes, right, go get help. There's a farmhouse not too far ahead." So he got his flashlight, got his machete, and he starts hacking out into snake and alligator infested waters. I do not, that's the one part about this that I find unbelievable.
Right.
Because nobody would do that. But Florida man, I guess, was even a thing back then. So he notices immediately it's kind of a weird smell. And as he gets closer, it's just really getting to him, where he's actually, signaling the boys to go away. And he said it felt like an oven had opened and it was like fire coming out. He just kind of looks up and he sees what he describes as a large disc-like object about 30 feet in diameter, and it's got glowing lights and circling above him, making no noise. He shines his flashlight up and notices it has kind of like a concave bottom and it's smooth. And so he starts now panicking. He's like, "Oh goodness, what have I seen?" And he says that he heard a grinding sound, like metal on metal. And he realized some sort of hatch is opening. And a red light comes out, and it then turns into some sort of mist and surrounds him. And he covers his face, and then he doesn't remember anything. Now, the Boy Scouts back at the car are backing all this up. They don't see the ship because they're just seeing giant palmettos and craziness in the swamp, but they saw the big red ball of fire and then a series of lights they thought, might look kind of like road flares, the way they're describing them. And they run. They go get help. Police arrive very quickly, especially for the 1950s. They're about to start a massive search for the guy, but he shows up. He's kind of like staggering out. And the deputy says, "In all my years of law enforcement," I think he said like 20 years or something, "I've never seen anyone as terrified as that man." So when he looked at him, his hair had been burned. All the hair on his arms was like singed off. There were three strange burn marks on his scout hat. They found the flashlight on the ground and a flattened ring of grass that they could not explain. Sound familiar? Like a modern crop circle.
Yes.
So he's brought back to the sheriff's office, and one of the Project Blue Book guys comes down to talk to him and interviews the witnesses, investigates the area. They talk to some of the other Boy Scouts. In his report, he said they got the immediate impression that he was telling the truth. And they were able to find that singed grass in the clearing. And the lab tests for it showed strange stuff, like the roots were burnt to a crisp, but the upper part was fine. Like the leaves were fine. It was very weird. And they saw some radiation, but they couldn't figure out what. His hat and the burned skin, the doctor's notes just said flash heat source. And the cap said, sparks of some kind. The real detailed reporting here, right? from military, police, and hospitals.
Right.
So this kind of disappears from history because DeVergers, he starts getting some media attention, and he starts elaborating on his story, saying he saw an alien, he fought the alien. And he says later that the TV shows and stuff that were contacting him were telling him to spice it up, right? And so he was just giving them what they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, that means it starts getting discredited. He is been, people start coming out of the woodwork saying, oh, he's always told tall tales. He's always been a crazy guy. He went AWOL during military service and all this. Ruppelt, who was the Blue Book guy, he said it was the best UFO hoax in history because he couldn't explain how they did the grass, how they did the strange radiation and all this. But he was still convinced the guy seemed sincere, was just definitely a hoax. Well, now we're looking at it in later years and we realize, okay, what if it wasn't a hoax? What if it was real? And this is just 2 weeks before Flatwoods with a very similar story and a very similar thing. That's where we were like, wait a minute, there's more going on here, right? Could this connect? Well, so I start looking into more unusual cases around that time. And I come up with something the day before Flatwoods, September 11th, 1952. In this, we have 2 pilots on a training run from up in the panhandle of Florida, flying here to Tampa Bay. And they are just on a training mission. It's a pilot and a gunner. And it's just a typical flight from Pensacola Naval Base to MacDill here in Tampa Bay. Well, they disappeared and were reported missing in action, presumed lost. The families were never told officially what happened. It was deemed classified. They were eventually given a burial plate, but no bodies. They never found the plane, never found the bodies. Very unusual at this time because, if they were lost over the Gulf, I can understand that, but it was generally always something. And then what happens is a few years later, the families start doing some Freedom of Information acts and stuff. So just, I want to say 2006, they get a report that they died somewhere over Georgia, not over the Gulf. How do you fly over the Gulf and wind up in Georgia, right? So the report says training mishap. Unusual, right? So they're saying, oh, well, the pilot got off course, wound up crashing into the swamps in Georgia somewhere. Southern Georgia. Okay, well, then maybe we can find the plane if we can figure out, what they said or all this. This is very much becoming Flight 19 from the Bermuda Triangle where, they said they were one place and they're actually somewhere else. But more Freedom of Information Act reports. We find out they landed in MacDill and took off again almost instantly. Now, why did they take off again instantly if they'd just flown a ton? And then why did they disappear over Georgia? Well, we reached out to some other people who worked in MacDill at that time. And we still have not been able to get anything from Freedom of Information Act on it. It's still listed as a training accident, and that's all we can get in the reports. But one of my contacts, who's a historian that used to work at MacDill, has told me he found something very interesting. That there was a report of a scramble on September 12th, 1952, from MacDill of any available flights for a possible intruder. So let's say the jets fly up. These are early jets now. And they encountered something. And maybe one of them tags it. But it definitely tags one of them and causes a crash. They can't freak out the public saying, hey, we were invaded. Our airspace was invaded. This is right before the Korean War. Things are tense with Russia. This is a scary time. So, and right now is the same UFO flap is occurring all over the country. So here we may have had an encounter with a UFO and it may have tagged these poor guys. I'm not saying it wasn't a training mishap, but the timing is odd. And then the fact that there was this massive cover up for so long, and this scramble occurs in the middle of it. So if you're flying down, you see something unusual, and then you're ordered to fly back up, and then you go back up, and you're chasing something, you might have actually tagged it, because what happens? A few states further to the north, something crashes, and that becomes the Flatwoods incident. What if we shot one?
That's some good digging right there, Mark. Huge high five on that.
I mean, that's why we haven't published it yet, because we're still getting corroboration of the scramble. But that's like pulling teeth right now. Right. But I've had more than a few people remember it. So if I can just get one document on it, that's huge.
Yeah, I would definitely say so. I've never heard of any of this stuff. That's pretty awesome. I mean, the fact that, and it's also extremely odd that they even mentioned Georgia. Well, how would they know that unless they recovered something from there or some kind of a transmission? That poor family, though. It's cool to hear a story and it's all like, ooh, we love this stuff. But how sad for the family to not know.
Exactly. It's like, why were you keeping it a secret if it was just a tragic accident? And now, all right, there was a scramble. Fine, just say it was a scramble for a test, scramble for an alert. There were scrambles that aren't classified. Why is this one classified? What's the story?
Yeah, they can't even let
families. Yeah, they have grounds in Arcadia. They're at, and then one of them's the other crew member is in the Florida National Cemetery. So, which is basically Florida's Arlington. If you haven't been there, it's a pretty impressive site. 50,000, I believe, buried there already. Jeez. It's a lot. But anyway, so that's pretty wild. And I know we also want to talk some cryptids.
Before you go there, though, just a couple things from the August 19th, 1952. Yeah. Really interesting tidbits from that. The odor, you don't hear that quite as often. That's more of a haunting or a Bigfoot thing. And then the grinding sound kind of made me grin because I'm going, they need a little WD-40 on that craft.
Yes. Yeah. If it's so silent and then suddenly you hear the door creaking open, I'm like, yeah, that's definitely 1950s horror movie. And some of the stories, it was a yellow glow, but the boys said a red glow. But then, so yellow glow from the lights and then a red, the red glow from the beam or the explosive that hit him or whatever it was. There's even some talk of a yellow gas that came out, and this was one of the first ones where they said it might have been swamp gas that he saw, and that it caught fire. But he had some internal injuries too, like so his eyesight had been like greatly reduced, and they were they did studies on him to see if it was like possibly charred or cooked internally, but at the time nothing was ever came out of that. But he had damage on his muscles and his tendons. They were like, that couldn't have been faked.
Well, no, but he's a really good hoaxer. He can actually just manifest this kind of thing.
Oh, so. Yeah. He had 3 guys out there using special equipment to beat him up just so he could scare some Boy Scouts.
Yeah, no bruising showed, just the damage to the muscle and the eyeballs. Yeah.
Right. And this is before, like I said, there was the UFO flap going around at this time, but it's a little different. And then 66 years later, there's a private pilot in the same area claims that he saw a giant coned UFO that, followed him around just under 10,000 feet. And it just kept increasing in size as it descended, as he was going in. And he said it sounded like tires on a wet pavement as he got close to it, that he could hear over his plane. So it was pretty loud. And apparently this guy, typical Florida man, he took out a .38 and shot at it.
Go Florida man.
So you got to love that.
I love everyone in Florida. I don't care what anybody says. Anytime there's a news story, I'm like, please let this be my favorite state of Florida.
So yeah, and that one, it was just a little different, but nearby, same area down there. So you got to love the Everglades. There's plenty down there to talk about. So,
well, yeah, let's dig in some cryptid stories now.
All right. Well, from the Everglades, now this is one I don't think we've talked about yet. This is one. So when we were doing all this research, the whole reason we did the Eerie Appalachia was because we were stumbling on these UFO stories in Florida. I was doing a book on UFOs of Florida to follow up Creepy Florida, which is all ghosts. And they just kept pulling us back up to Flatwoods and pulling us back up to Mothman. So that's why we decided, well, we got to do Eerie Appalachia first, and then we can do this Florida book. But one of the stories that came up, of course, there's always the UFOs and are just military craft, right? Or military experiments or unusual things, because they're generally seen near military bases, people tend to assume that. One of the ones we found back in the Everglades, they've recently discovered an old abandoned facility out there. It was on some of the World War II training maps. They used a lot of areas out there for World War II to hide stuff, because they figured, Nazis and Germans aren't going to care. It's the middle of nowhere, Florida. They're going to hit the ports. They're not going to get into the swamps. So we could do some experimentation out there, like the TNT plants up in West Virginia. So, who's going to bomb there? One of them supposedly had genetic experimentation. This is classic urban legend, right? What happens is World War II ends, and in the mid-50s, 1955, a family is driving along the random back roads of the Everglades looking for a place to just get away from it all. Which, again, I don't know why you do that in the Everglades. It's a terrible place to hide, but you can get away from things there.
Yes, you can.
And they followed one of the roads that apparently led to this old abandoned military complex. And there they found a small group of people, they assumed were people, that were about 3 to 4 feet tall and had heads similar to pigs. And they were wearing tribal clothing, as described, and carrying like spears and, primitive weapons. They panicked and drove away and called the cops and said, what the heck did we just see? Well, a couple more reports of them come up, and these are known as now the Squallies. That's the nickname they've been given. They've been cited numerous times, particularly in the 50s, 60s, and even early 70s. People were seeing these things. Generally 2 or 3 in a group. They had spears, the swords, some people said, or axes. They were a nearly, you could go like 6 months or 7 months if you're looking at the reports of them, and then they'd show back up. It was crazy. So I looked into it. I couldn't find much on them other than some, urban legends and these initial sighting reports. But there really wasn't a whole lot more to go on. So I just kind of left that float out there. It was one we were originally going to put in like eerie or freaky. And I started reaching back into it because we were doing this UFO book that we may still get to. We would talk about it at the conventions and stuff we would go to. And I would bring it up and just say, hey, has anybody ever heard of this? Because I wanted more information on it, right? That's some of the best way we get some of our stories is, I talk about it and then somebody calls me and says, oh, hey, I saw something very similar.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we were at a convention and I was talking about it. a guy stood up at the end when I'm doing Q&A and said, "Hey, I'm glad you mentioned the pig people." And I'm like, "Okay." He's like, "I saw something very similar. I live in an area called the Seminole Woods, which is just north of the Everglades, out on the coast area, kind of near Cape Canaveral area." And he said he was coming home from his apartment one night, and this giant figure comes out, and he called it the Boar Man, where it looked more like a wild boar head and big, hairy top, but was definitely pig-like. He said it almost looked like a satyr, but with a pig head. And not a bear, definitely a man chest, and carrying what looked like a big stick, maybe a spear. And it charged across the road, came out of a lake, charged across the road in front of him, and dove into some swamp woods next to him on the other side of the road on the way back to his apartment complex. So he almost wrecked his car. This thing scared him so bad. And he thought he was crazy. Never told anybody about it for years. And while he's talking, this other guy on the other side of the room stands up and says, "I saw the same damn thing. I was in Seminole Woods." And he explains that he saw something very similar, didn't tell anybody about it because he thought everybody think he was crazy. They lived in the same area, approximately the same time. This would have been about 30 years after the last sighting. So this has been about early 2000s. So let's say those little guys in 30 years grew up. What would they look like? Are they still there? So now we've put out the call for, researchers in the area. It seemed like they moved a little north, probably pushed out by some of the, construction in that area, housing projects going up in that area. And we're looking out for cryptid hunters in the area to say, "Hey, have you seen anything like this?" It's so odd that this thing turns up. And then that's why we always tell everybody, "Hey, if you have an experience, tell somebody. Call your hotline, call somebody's hotline, send me an email, send any researcher on this stuff an email, and we can get you in touch with people who can look into these things."
How incredible is it that two people that saw the grown Squallies, the Boar Man, now we're going to call them, right, the big ones, the same guys at your event. You must have just been going, this is just insane. And so did they. I'm sure they felt very relieved.
Yeah. Blew my mind. We all had a little confab afterwards. I've kept in contact with both of them. They reached out to see if family members or anybody else had seen it. So far, I've had one more person say they saw something similar, but and again, that was fairly recent, just about 5 years ago, and not too far off from Seminole Woods. So anybody west coast of Florida, is kind of southwest, now more central west, keep your eyes open when you're driving those side roads. Maybe watching for the next launch from Elon or NASA and see what you see.
Yet another reason to stay out of the swamp, because the snakes and gators weren't quite enough, right?
Yes.
The Boar Man.
Now we've got
Boar Men.
pig men with spears. So my next one I want to talk to you about is a recent thing. I can't narrow it down too much because they do not want publicity about this location. But I think we have something here in Florida that may rival Skinwalker or even Fox Hollow. This is an area, it's in Ocala, just outside of Ocala. It is a horse farm. That does not narrow it down if you know Ocala. So they house a lot of very high quality horses, and they also rent the stables for people for training purposes. And they train some very high performing racehorses there. So that's why they don't want publicity about this. But the owner has had some very unusual experiences, and they reached out to me. And let's just say I had to bring in a Bigfoot expert or a skunk ape expert down here. I had to bring in a UFOologist, and I've had to bring in 2 paranormal teams to investigate one location. And we all want to write a book about this location. The strange things that have happened here. She reaches out to me, the owner, and says, "Hey, I've read your books. I've got some unusual stuff going on. Who do I need to contact?" And I'm like, "Well, let's talk." So we had a long talk one night, and she described what happened. And then she was able to send me some security camera footage to show me what happened. And then she was able to send me pictures of prints near her property. So we're hitting all the targets. The description. She gets an alert of an intruder in one of the stalls. Yeah, one of the barns. And she turns on the security camera, automatically comes on whenever there's movement. Well, the cameras are on most of the time because it's an open barn. There's bugs. There's horses. Some movement's going to trigger them a lot. This one was already on, and she sees what she thought was dust or an orb, typical, maybe a bug flying in front of the camera, but it grows and becomes like a sphere of lightning, like a plasma bubble, growing in the middle of the hall, in between the stalls. It just pulsing with energy. I watched the footage. It's crazy. It's like something out of a superhero movie, like a cage of lightning in a ball. And then it disappears, like ball lightning maybe. The horse next to it is startled and, and definitely acting up. She gets down there almost immediately, and on the wall is what looks like some sort of, almost a sigil. It's a circle with some lines in it. To me, it looks kind of like an upside down peace symbol, but the lines don't align quite right. And it's like an oil on the wall. It's not painted. It's not, solid. She takes some photos of it. It keeps coming back. That oil just keeps reappearing in various places and not in the same location, near that wall and near other walls in that same barn. The paranormal team came out to investigate that. And while they were there, I went with them, and they were able to see some unusual readings from the EMF detectors. They were able to they checked for wiring issues. They checked for, the security cameras to see if they were functional. It has not reappeared since. They have had, some orbs and other stuff, but nothing too convincing. But now a couple of the jockeys who were staying there training complained about loud noises over the next few nights after the paranormal team was there. There was knocking and there was unusual, strange sounds. So we went back out, and on that time was when the team out there caught some strange infrared activity that looked like negative infrared, like really deep cold. Now, this is Ocala, Florida. This is April, which is the start of our 11 months of August. So it's hot. There was a little bit of rain the week before, but not something that was generating almost below, right at freezing temperatures on their infrared that looked like shadow figures, literally. It was on that trip that she showed us the Bigfoot prints near the property that she had known about. And hadn't seen any in a while. We had talked about it on our initial call, but we had not gotten any fresh ones when we went out there. There were fresh prints on the edge of the property at this point. One of our Sasquatch research teams we reach out to has done some casts and is doing research on that. And they've been out there a couple times looking around now as well. So sadly, again, this is one of those, I wish we could tell you where it is and wish we could show you all this stuff. It will come out at some point. We're just not sure when. But right now, let's just say there's some Olympic equestrian events that have had horses that came from that property recently, which is one of the reasons why we can't, talk about it too much.
That sigil thing I don't think I've ever heard anything like that.
Yeah, it was so bizarre, and we've seen it a few times since we've been out there. It is not the same dimensions every time we see it, and it's not identical every time we see it, but it is the similar oil. Now that oil has been sent off for lab testing, and I have not heard the reports back from the paranormal team that sent that off yet to see if anything's come back yet.
That's like right out of Ghostbusters, you know, when they're
Yep.
getting the slime and putting that in the old jar to get that analyzed.
Exactly what they did. Yep, and they have apparently they sent it off to a crime lab and a science lab up at the Smithsonian. So
wow.
we'll see what happens.
Oh, I'm excited to learn more about that one.
Yes.
Is that David that's going out there for the Bigfoot stuff?
He is one of the team, I believe, on that.
Mhm.
It was him I originally reached out to about it. I'm not sure if he wound up doing it or if it was one of his other teams. I have not been part of the Bigfoot hunts for it.
Gotcha.
So I got a little sick at that point and wasn't able to go out as much.
Right.
So it is still under investigation. And
oh, that's awesome.
It's crazy. And then I have one more story for you.
I'm excited.
Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm excited about this one.
Okay. About 3 months ago, I received an email from a truck driver in North Florida who said, was driving along I-10, heading outside of Jacksonville. He saw something unusual on the side of the road. He thought it was basically something moving in the kudzu originally. Now, for kudzu, for those who are up north or out west and don't know, kudzu basically owns all of Georgia and North Florida. It was a vine brought in to hopefully kill mosquitoes, and it's an invasive species, and it literally kills everything else. It just grows on everything and covers it. It just basically makes things dripping with vines. If you see it ever covering an old house, you can't even tell there's a house there. It's just like vines in the shape of a house. It's crazy. He said what he thought looked like movement there. He thought maybe it was a bear or something. It caught his eye. And as he got closer, he realized the kudzu was moving. And then he said he literally wet himself because it moved at him. He realized it looked like a horse made out of vines. Had to floor it past the area and get his breath back before he stopped at the next station to clean himself off and talk about it. And he wrote it down and then heard of me, and somebody, I guess another truck driver told him he heard me on either you or Coast to Coast and said, hey, contact that guy. He'll love to hear this story.
That's awesome.
Well, I get a lot of emails like that. I hadn't really thought much of it but it was cool. It was new and unique, right? So I emailed him back, got the full story, did an interview with him, recorded it in my notes. And then, kind of was like, well, I'd love to get verification. I'll do some research in the area, see what I see, if there's any other history. That's me. I like to hear the history behind it and see if there was any legends or folklore. Well, not 2 weeks ago, I got an email from a friend who was traveling to the north and said, hey, I saw something you're not going to believe. And I was just outside of Jacksonville on I-10, and I swear I saw a horse made out of kudzu charging at my car. And
you hadn't made your notes public. You hadn't talked about this, and neither had he. The first witness. Oh my goodness.
Nobody. I was floored by this email. So I called my friend. She's a researcher of spooky stuff, but she's a dogman specialist. She's a skunk ape specialist. She does not do other things. She doesn't even like lake monsters very much, So this was something she'd never heard of. And she's like, I think it was playing tricks with my eyes. I was just like, oh my God, this is 2 in 3 months. It's there. So as soon as we can get a break between the cons, we're heading to that area. I've reached out to a team in that area. I'm not exactly sure how we want to call it. Carrie, what did you call it, Carrie?
I don't remember.
Oh, okay. Well, she had a name for it, but then we wound up calling it Swamp Horse because it looked like swamp thing, but as a horse.
Right.
From what my friend said, what is that? What does that fit? Is it an earth spirit? Is it some new cryptid? Is it people just having their eyes playing tricks on things that's in that area? So, but they all parties said it was moving and moved at them at speed, like at the speed of their car, which is 70, 80 miles an hour in that area.
Right, because they're on I-10, which is obviously a high-speed freeway or regular freeway.
Nobody does 70 unless you want to get run over.
That's right. Yeah, people do drive fast in Florida. I love it.
Yep.
The horse made out of... Okay, these are some of my favorite things on the planet to cover, and everybody knows that, is the stuff that you cannot fit into a box, and you sure as heck fire can't put that into any category that we currently know of.
Right. I mean, that's insane. I mean, I haven't heard, the truck driver said it seemed like it was going to wreck his car. So, wreck his truck. So it was, he was concerned. So that, tells me aggressive.
Now he's in a truck, an 18-wheeler?
Yeah. 18-wheeler. Yeah.
And he was
Big
even
truck.
scared. So this thing was quite large. Did they say that it looked like the size of a normal, quote unquote normal horse, a big horse?
He said a big frickin' horse. That was his word. He didn't use frickin'. He was a little more colorful. But as up to the top of his cab. So
up to the
wow. Good size.
That's because they measure horses in hands. Yeah.
So that would be a good.
That's like a Percheron or something. Those real
15,
big ones.
Hands.
That's
bigger than a Belgian.
Right.
Bigger than a Clydesdale. Now my friend who's the researcher, she's also a big horse fan, and that's why she said it moved like a horse. It looked like a horse. And then with him saying the same thing, a vine covered horse, I was like, wait a minute. I thought maybe it's a sickly horse that's, got some green algae growing on it or something. But no, she was like, no, dripping with vines. It was nothing animalistic except the way it moved.
Like the vines were just a natural part of it, or just that was the shape of the thing.
Was just, it was made of it. She saw no fur, no eyes, no nothing, but a definite movement. It was a dead breeze. There was no wind that day, so there was nothing else was moving. That's why her eyes were drawn to it, and then it came at them. That's just wild, right? And she was on a research trip up north, and going on a research trip up north, she just got back, and we're actually meeting at Tampa Bay Comic-Con to discuss this some more this weekend. So,
oh my goodness, I love this one so much. I mean, it's terrifying enough just the thought of that in and of itself, but you brought up something interesting, and you said, what if this is an elemental? And really, when you really look at those things can be quite terrifying and nasty, to be honest with you. So
that was when the few researchers I've reached out to some have said earth spirit, some have said, Native American, vengeance thing or something like that. And I'm like, it could be all these things. I don't want to pin it down because I'm like I said, still the early days on this, but I definitely want to get boots on the ground in that area to see what people see. So I've reached out to quite a number of people waiting for replies. And again, if any, phrases are in that area and want to reach out to me, I'm sure I can hook you up with a team, that I'm sure they're going to want as many people looking into this as possible.
That would be on my, yes, please. I would definitely like to see that list.
Yes.
That is an incredible couple of sightings. Again, just like the whole Boar Man thing at this conference, 2 people stand up. Now you got 2 for this horse made of vine. You must have been freaking out about this too.
I literally have been spinning in my chair. Is why I wanted to call you so bad. I'm like, we've got to talk to Shannon about this, because this is, I don't think I've ever stumbled on something like this fast, this backed up, independently verified. This is nuts. And there's something going on there. And I am super excited to see what comes out of it.
I can imagine you and Carrie's faces when you got that second email from your friend. You must have both just been like, are you kidding me? I
picked up the phone in 5 seconds and called her. She was still driving. And I'm like, you have to pull over and stop. We have to talk now.
Yes. Oh my God. When I told her
about the other sighting, she flipped. She had no idea. She's like, oh my gosh, this is like the holy grail of Dogman stuff. She would kill for 2 reports, next to each other within a few months in the same area,
Because
this
how
creature has an
how
area
do
of
you
operation.
explain you can't begin to explain that away. You have something. When you said there was a new cryptid that you were going to discuss this evening with me, in a million years I could never come up with a horse made of vines. So for two people to come forward within 2 weeks of each other is phenomenal.
Yeah, where does that come from? And then, and now like I said, we've been jokingly calling it swamp horse, and Carrie's been scribbling away. We're still, she's still finishing the stuff for the new book, because she's been given all this extra time to work on it. So they're becoming a lot more intricate than what we were originally doing. But then, so she immediately was like, "Oh, I've got some ideas." So,
oh yeah.
So, and we guarantee you, we'll send it to you as soon as we have something presentable.
Her drawings gonna be amazing of the kudzu creature, right? I mean, that's such a cool story, Mark. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. And guys, like he said, please, if you and the Boar Man situation as well. Yep. If anybody has any information about the horse made of vines up there on I-10 outside of Jacksonville, you said, right?
Yep.
And
generally going. Well, one was going west, one was going east. So
wow,
it's been seen both sides. So,
and you have the area narrowed down to.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say too much more.
No.
I want to see if any more independents come nearby that area. If somebody says, "Oh, I saw it," in this spot, and then I can, okay. Maybe,
I just meant for your purposes. Obviously, they must have seen it. Like close
they
in
are
proximity,
within 3
right?
miles of each other.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah,
that's awesome,
crazy, and they both could be off by like a mile. So,
right. So you cast the net 5 miles, and that's pretty darn impressive.
Yeah, that is the plan, and then like I said, and then if anybody has any information, wants to step forward, might have some contacts that worked in MacDill in the 50s, or anything like that, we'd love to talk to you about that. And always, you can reach us at eerieflorida.com. There's an email me button right on the front page. That's where I get most of my email stories, and I'm always looking for new ones. So, I appreciate. And then, like I said, if you need help, if you've got something unusual and you don't know who to reach out to, don't call Ghostbusters. You can reach out to me, and I'll get you to the people I've vetted that, I know will help properly.
That's right. Yes. Well, and not just the email and the website, but let everybody know where they can find your books. And then, of course, you guys on your socials.
Oh, yeah. We're at Eerie, Florida. You can find us most anywhere, socially media. And then, eerieflorida.com. You can order direct from Carrie and I, and Carrie will draw a little something in there, and I'll scribble a little something in it. It is con season, so give us a little bit of time. If you have any special requests, because sometimes we get a little backed up this time of year. But I'm also on Ripley's road trips with Ripley's now on the Discovery Channel, and you can find us on the YouTubes there. Watch a couple episodes of that. I'm their Florida guy, so I tell the Florida legends on that. I'm going to have a little bit in your On the Trail of UFOs Dark Skies with Seth coming out. That'll be on iTunes and Amazon, right? VOD.
Yeah, all the VOD platforms.
Yep. And then last but not least, feel free you can buy our books anywhere. Amazon, of course, the big evil A, but you can also find us at your local bookstores. Just reach out to them, and most of them can order us, no problem.
Well, Mark, as always, it's a pleasure to have you on, and I can't wait for episode or number 11. I'm sure that will happen hopefully sooner rather than later. It's been a little while since you guys have been on, so it's been wonderful to catch up. Cool stories, and huge high five on this stuff. You're really digging into it lately. Congratulations.
It's been a fun trip, and like I said, far cry from digging in the yard for Hellview Cemetery to now digging into archives and historical societies, records, and military base archives. That's fun. So, but as always, Shannon, it's a pleasure. Carrie,
Yes.
we love you and we miss you and hope to see you again soon. So
love you guys. Thank you for always being available for ITF. I love you, and so do the listeners.
All right, well, we'll be back again soon, and we'll have more stories. And hopefully, if some people send us some stuff, we can investigate more. And maybe we'll even get lucky and see what we can find on that swamp horse.
Oh man,
So,
that's
or
such a cool story. Yeah.
The kudzu creature. I like that. We may coin that.
The kudzu creature. Yeah, you can have it. You can have it. But I really do hope that folks get in touch with you guys. Please get in touch with Mark and Carrie if you have any information on that. I'm not even saying you don't have to ever call me, and I'm not going to try to get you on the show. Just contact Mark, because it is really important to get every report that we can.
Yep, especially in these early days, so that we can actually maybe figure out what this is.
Yes.
So, I mean, if worst case, or not worst case, but maybe it is an animal in distress that's got some sort of algae on it, and we'd love to get it taken care of. So
yeah, that is.
So I've sent some out. I've sent reports out. Don't worry, I'm not hoarding this information, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, time to go fishing, right?
Yep, exactly.
Good night to all the spiders too.
Oh yeah. She just had 3 new batches. 3 egg sacs hatched, and that's a lot.
I think it's more like they erupted out of there. Yeah. I think is how my mind prefers to imagine them.
yes, they are adorable. If you ever want one, just let us know. We'll send one.
I'll think about it.
They're jumping spiders. They're tiny and they're cute. So.
Well, though, I actually, you know what? As much as I dislike spiders, I don't like the big ones. The small ones, I'll actually save those little guys and bring them outside or whatever I need to do. But big ones, I don't have a good time with big boys.
Yeah. Well, that's Clarion. That's our big one. And the amazing Wonder Claudius, he says hi. And then the Python's Pajamas, Missy, and our new one, Thulsa Doom, all say hi too. So.
Did you get the name Clarion from Count of Monte Cristo?
No, it came from DC Comic. He's an obscure villain, but sometimes a good guy. He's kind
of a god of chaos.
God of chaos, yeah. He's in the Constantine series, and he shows up in a lot of the other mystical DC universe stuff. So he definitely looked like a Clarion. He was very blue and orange and spidery. And,
well, then he that's a fitting name for him. Then that's cool.
Yes, and there's others too, but. We know you're a fan, so.
Yes, sure. I'll think about the spider being sent to me. I'll think on that. I appreciate the offer.
No problem. And thanks so much, Shannon. You have a wonderful night.
Bye-bye.
Well, I'm so-and-so. I was given this name by my parents. I've been to such and such a college. I've done these things in my profession. I produce a little biography. Buddha says, forget it. That's not true. That's some story. That's all gone. That's all past. I want to see the real you are now. Well, nobody knows who that is. Because we don't know ourselves except through listening to our echoes and consulting our memories. But then there's a real you, and that again leads us back to this question. Who are you? That is the real you. We shall see how they play with this exam by the koans to get you to come out of your shell and find out who you really are. elaborate on this. They will say, no, we don't believe literally in reincarnation. That after your funeral, you will suddenly become somebody different, living somewhere else. They will say reincarnation means this, that if you sitting here now are really convinced that you're the same person who walked in the door half an hour ago, you're being reincarnated. If you are liberated, you will understand that you're not. The past doesn't exist. The future doesn't exist. There is only the present. That's the only real you that there is. The Zen master Dogen put it in this way. He said, spring does not become the summer. First there is summer, and then there is spring. When you settle down in the train to read your newspaper and so on, you are not the same person who a little while ago left the platform. If you think you are linking your moments up in a chain. And this is what binds you to the wheel of birth and death. But when you know that every moment in which you are is the only moment, this comes into Zen. A master will say to somebody, get up and walk across the room. And he comes back and he says, where are your footprints? They've gone. So where are you? Who are you? When we are asked who we are, we usually give a kind of recitation of a history.